Titans. Incredible war machines. Equipped with the most devastating weaponry, they own the battlefield.
All shall fear them, or know their doom.
I'm Chris, and you are watching Always Paint the Rivets. Today, we're building and speed painting some war dogs. Not going to need anything particularly special to do this, just some clippers, hobby knife, plastic glue, some super glue for the magnets, as we are also going to be magnetising these war dogs. If you're only interested in the magnetising or the speed painting of these war dogs, then please go to the description of the video and all the right timestamps are in there for you, so you can just jump ahead to what you want to see. Now, because we're going to be speed painting, we don't actually need that many paints. You can see I'm using the 2 thin coats range from Duncan Rhodes. Just absolutely love that range of paints. Please do check it out if you've not used it before. And underneath you can see that I've included the name of the Citadel paint equivalent. I will also show you how to use this verdigris effect from Dirty Down Paints. So first of all, we need to get building, and this is what we're aiming for in the first step. We will be doing some sub-assembly here just to make the painting a bit easier, so make sure you do not glue those armour panels, otherwise you won't be able to do the sub-assembly later on. So that's it, let's start clipping some bits out. As you're clipping bits out, just take a look for any of these little pieces of sprue that are still left on. Make sure you scrape them away well so we don't get any gaps forming between the parts of the model that we're assembling. I'm just going to use the plastic glue here. We're saving that super glue for the magnets later on. And once you've painstakingly been through all the different sprues to find all the bits, you should end up with something like this. I have to say, this box of war dogs is one of the worst I've found for random bits being on different sprues. No numerical order going on between where things are, so you will have to hunt around a little bit for the parts that you need. Now we're going to move on to building the main bit of the body. Make sure you don't glue the top piece of carapace armour on, as we're going to be sub-assembling that for easier speed painting later on. Now when you're assembling this top piece of carapace armour, make sure you glue this armour panel at the front separately. Glue it to the carapace, and then dry fit it to the rest of the body of the war dog. This is just to make sure you don't end up with any weird gaps, because if that carapace armour is set with that armour panel at the front at the wrong angle, you're going to get some weird gaps appearing between the main body and the top bit of the armour. Now you can see at the side just that slight ridge where that front armour panel meets the rest of the carapace. That's the bit we're looking out for to make sure that we get it right. Then we can move on to gluing the pauldrons. They can go straight onto that same bit of carapace armour you've just assembled. And when you're gluing the arms and weapons, just make sure you stay well away from any bits you want to move. Any glue that spills over just because you've been a bit enthusiastic with how you've applied it can mean that some of the moving parts will seize up, because the plastic will fuse together with the plastic glue, and then you won't be able to move them and you won't be able to pose your miniatures as much as you would like in the future. Now, how to show you this? So I'm clearly looking for part number 1. Yes, that's right, part number 1. So let's see if I can find part number 1. Oh wait, no, that's part 64? 64? Yeah. No, that is the right bit. That is the actual bit. That is the equivalent of part number 1. So if you're looking at this, when you get to this page and you're assembling the claw hand, go for part 64. Another little thing to be aware of is the right and left assemblies. They are on separate pages for this claw hand as well, so do just watch out for that. Now we're all done with clipping our bits out, we're going to move on to the magnetising. Now, to magnetise the arms, we're going to chop the entire bit off the bottom of this arm strut, and that's where our magnet's going to sit. So that'll be the top magnet that will sit onto the arm strut, and then we're going to place another one at the top of the weapon arm. Now, it can be quite nerve-wracking chopping up a very expensive model, especially if it's your first time doing anything like this. But don't worry, it's definitely worth it. By doing it this way and magnetising the arms, it will allow you to run multiple different versions of War Dogs. So as rules change, you can take advantage of slightly stronger weaponry, whereas points changes, you're not handcuffed to just one loadout for your war dogs. Now we're going to grab our super glue and just dob this into the top of that weapon arm. And yes, dob is a technical term for delicately place. I'm pretty sure it is anyway. We'll just place the magnet in and just make sure it's sat nicely in the centre of that weapon arm. And we'll use our special toothpick kebab skewer tool here. Very, very high end. And you can see that magnet sits really nicely. You can't really see any of it above the weapon arm. Now, to make sure we don't end up with the magnets repelling each other, you can add a little dot onto the magnet to show which side you want to glue down or which side you want to have faced up. I like to just pop the magnet on top of the other one, that way make sure that they are attracting each other and pulled together, and then just glue the weapon arm strut straight on top. And there we go, this is what you'll end up with, a fully magnetised weapon arm, just with one weapon for now, but this will allow you to swap between a brigand, a carnivore, or the stalker variants of the war dog really easily, so it's really, really worth doing. So you can see that the magnet will show, and once that's all painted up though, you won't really be able to see or notice that the magnet is there. And if we have a look at the box art, you can see there is this little bit of metal that actually sits between the weapon arm and the arm strut itself. If you don't like that look though, and you want them to sit really close to each other and completely flush, then I would just drill a small hole in the top arm strut and place a smaller magnet within there. You should still get a decent enough magnetic connection, but it won't be quite as strong as the bigger magnet we've put in now. These 3mm magnets would be fine, and we are going to use these to magnetise the head of this war dog. So the magnet's going to sit just in here, in this body part of the war dog. And on the head, we're going to chop this little piece of sprue off the top. That's where the second magnet's going to sit. So we'll grab our clippers, chop that off. We don't want it to poke out too much, otherwise the head will sit a bit too low. So we're also going to chop this little platformy bit off the top of the head as well. And now I'm going to cut a bit more off the top, but wait! Don't do what I did. Don't cut this bit off. This was painful to rectify. So the problem with chopping this bit off was that there wasn't then enough contact between this bit of the head and the magnet that would attach to the main war dog body. It just meant that any time I tried to glue the two bits together, there just wasn't enough contact for the super glue to hold the head, and it just kept slipping off time and time again. To fix that, what I had to do was glue this really small bit of plastic back on top of the war dog's head. That just meant that the head would sit up a little bit further and give enough space for the glue to actually hold the magnet to the head. But it was very small, very painful. I wish I'd just not cut that bit in the first place. It would have made my life a hell of a lot easier. But after doing that, as you can see, the head stuck absolutely fine, and we've now got a nicely moving magnetised head on our war dog. If you are using the other heads, they sit generally absolutely fine if you cut that sprue down a little bit more, as you can see here. And there we go, we've got our built war dogs ready for priming and painting. Now we're ready to prime our models. Now I will be wearing this very stylish gas mask, just because as I was about to prime these models, it started hammering it down with rain in the UK, so I'll just be using my airbrush instead. And I'm using this equally stylish box just with the front cut off. You can see it's been around the block a few times just to make sure that any overspray from my airbrush doesn't contaminate anything on my desk. I'm sticking with the Too Thin Coats range of paints here, just thinning it down with some airbrush thinner, goes through the airbrush really nicely. Then I'm just going to do the same thing again, just with Death Reaper or Corvus Black if you're using the Citadel paints, just to get those sub-assembled armour panels all primed. And we're ready to start speed painting. We've got our brushes, we've got our wet palette ready, and we've got our speed paint timer, affectionately known as Neville, all ready to go. Now the first step of our speed paint is to put some wash all over the silver bits that we've just primed. That's going to allow some depth to go into the models and make them look a bit grimier. The silver looks a little bit too pristine right now, and these are Chaos War Dogs after all, right? You can use any kind of black or brown wash for this step. I'm sticking with the Duncan Rhodes paints, mainly this time actually because Oblivion Black Wash leaves a bit more of a black stain after itself, no matter where you put it, where the new Null Oil formula actually seems to sit more in the recesses, which is great for a wash. Actually, for what we're looking to do right now, I prefer for everything to be stained a little bit more black, give it a bit more of that grimy, grimdark sort of look. Now apply this shade all over the model, every single silver bit. Don't worry if you apply a lot, just make sure it doesn't pull too much. If it does, just spread it around a little bit with your brush. Now that will take a little while to dry, so while it does dry, let's move on to base coating some of the silver parts that are mainly on that black carapace armour. I'm just using a little bit of Lamy and medium here just to make sure that the paint flows really nicely off my brush. I'm using a size 1 brush here, so something around the equivalent of a small layer brush from Citadel. 10 minutes on the clock and we're ready to do our first base coat. So we're just going to get a little bit of silver loaded up onto our brush, and we're going to start blocking in these chains, pipes and the central parts of the pauldrons. And this is where we're at. So we've got the silver down, we've got everything shaded, 23 minutes on the clock, and we're ready to start doing some dry brushing. Now I'm using a flat, large dry brush here, just so we've got some big silver bits to cover. You can use these rounder dry brushes. I find they're generally more useful for flatter, bigger panels, just to get a bit more cover down on those. But I want some nice sharper edges, so I'm going to be using this flatter dry brush today. I'm just going to load up our brush with a little bit of silver, and then we're going to start working that into the bristles using this kitchen roll. Now I always find dry brushing is badged as a real beginner technique, and yes, it can be easy and a good way to get some added texture and a good look onto your minis without, detailed highlighting. But as you can see here, the more pressure I apply onto the tissue paper, the more paint comes off. The lighter I apply pressure, the less paint comes off, and getting that balance of pressure alongside the right amount of paint loaded up onto your brush can be quite tricky to get used to. But if you do make a mistake, that's okay. You can always just shade back over the bit of heavy dry brushing that you've done, go back over it with the shade, and then reapply your dry brush later, just using a bit less pressure or a bit less paint on the brush. As you can see, I'm just working my way around, dry brushing all the different parts that we've got. When it comes to this minigun, I paint horizontally across the gun barrels. That'll just make sure you catch the raised edges. And now we're ready to get another base coat down. So this base coat will be Death Reaper or Corvus Black from Citadel. What we're going to do is we're going to hit these main armour panels on the weapons. And on the main body, we're looking for these sort of ankle pieces of armour, just down here, or foot pieces of armour. The knee pads, just here, and these look like side pocket bits, so they all want to be Death Reaper or Corvus Black. And that's it, let's start our second base coat. Cue cheesy painting inspiration music, let's go! Now let's add some Spartan Bronze or Balthasar Gold, just to break up those big blocks of silver. This is a really nice colour that complements that. And this should be roughly where you'll get to once you've hit all of the bits with Spartan bronze. Weapons next, and we're making great progress, guys. And then these small spiky teeth that you're going to find on the carapace armour. And finally we're going to apply some Skeleton Legion onto the head. Whew, that felt like a lot of base coating, so let's take stock and see where we're at. Okay, 94 minutes, a lot left to do. Let's see if we can get these war dogs painted in an hour each. So an hour of hands-on painting across both of them. 26 minutes, okay.
Error. Error. The Omnissiah has removed this footage. You shall not see painting the pauldrons. Error. Error. Farewell.
Yeah, sorry everyone, there's a bit of a rookie mistake there. I completely lost some footage on just applying a second coat of paint to the heads of the war dogs and also just tidying up the pauldrons. So we have moved on a little bit in time since the last one, but please trust me, that all happened. And we're now left with just 23 and a bit minutes on the clock, with still quite a lot to do. This head could really do with a third coat of paint. It is looking pretty patchy, so we better get cracking. So let's whack that third coat of paint onto this head, and then we'll move on to getting the dirty down verdigris ready. Now you really want to shake this paint well, at least until you hear the little ball rolling around inside. You should be able to hear that rattling around inside the pot really clearly. I'm just using this really cheap pipette from Amazon just to draw the paint out of the pot, and then going to mix it with some water. Now, I do find it is really important to water down this verdigris. I've had really mixed results with it when using it in the past. I have used it straight out the pot and it just dries really blue and a bit shiny actually. So I found by using and diluting it with water, you start to get the really lighter blue effect coming through, and you get all those really nice mixed tones that we're really looking for with this verdigris, just to make it really stand out and add some really quick depth and interest to the model you're painting. We're just going to cover all that silver bit of the pauldrons. It will naturally pool in the corners. And I also made an executive decision at this stage to chuck it over one of the heads. I'm not convinced how this will turn out, and I guess we'll see how it does turn out later. And now we're going to add that ghostly green effect to the armour panels. For me, this is all about the machine spirit of the Chaos War Dog eking its way through the armour and making itself seen. So it really showcases that real personality of the model for me. And it is a relatively simple technique to do as well, which is really nice. So you can just aim for the corners and just poke your brush into the corners of those armour panels. The dark green we're using for a start doesn't show up amazingly well against the black, so it is quite forgiving if you do make a mistake. When we get onto the lighter greens, we're then just kind of painting inside the central parts of the green bits we've just painted. So again, using that as a guide, it's really quite straightforward to get this effect of, you know, a lighter green going to a darker green, eking through the armour panels. And I'm really sorry, another rookie mistake here. You'll notice you've been staring nicely at a bit of the back of my head for quite a while. This is because I moved my camera to try and actually get a better shot of the paint I was doing, and unfortunately just made it way worse. And now I realise I'm getting a massive bald spot towards the back of my head. So yeah, winning I guess. But enough about my hair loss issues. We are getting very tight on time. We've got around 10 minutes left to get these done in an hour each. So we really need to get a move on. I still want to get some ghostly feel going on. We need to put that lighter green in the middle of the armour panels. And we, of course, need to paint the rivets. So as you stare beautifully at some of the model, but more of the back of my head, you can see I'm just starting to add that lighter green into the centre of the green we've already added. Just really getting to that ghostly feel. Ideally this would be blended a little bit more. We'd probably use 3 or 4 colours, or maybe a little bit of blending in between both. But actually for now, just because we're speed painting and time's against us, I think just adding the lighter green into the centre of the green bits we've already painted is really going to work out okay and give that same effect, just, you know, not quite as clinical looking. So just work your way around the model, just adding in this little bit of light green. And now the part everyone's been waiting for is painting the rivets, of course. So just go back to your Cerakote Silver or your Citadel Lead Belcher, and you're just literally dotting this over all those rivets on the armour panels, and there is quite a few of them. And there were so many rivets that it was at this stage when I effectively ran out of my 2-hour sort of like self-imposed time window. So the hour each per model sort of failed at this point. But I want to finish these rivets. It's going to really make that extra little bit of difference, considering we're speed painting as well. Add that little bit of interest. We're going to get it done, and we're going to see what the results are in a second. And there we go, an hour and 23 minutes and 23 seconds, our war dogs are done. Let's get them snapped off from their sub-assemblies and let's get these bad boys built. Now because we super glued these, they should just snap off really easily. Oh, yeah, oh goodness me. Okay, yeah, no, that one, yeah, not so much. That's pretty tough. Note for the future, don't glue 3 contact points onto a base, even if it is super glue and should snap off. And here we have all our sub-assembled parts, looking fairly good. Obviously a lot more that we could do with these. Maybe look out for a future video, and we'll get them highlighted and painted up to a really good standard. But for now, let's go to a little showcase. Overall, I'm really happy with how these guys turned out. I mean, there's just an hour of hands-on painting per model here. Well, just over an hour, yeah, an hour and a minute and a bit, you know. And I think what we've done as well is we've laid the perfect foundations to really enhance these guys and then take them to the next level. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And until the next time, always remember to paint the rivets. See you soon.